And now, as we've closed up the photo, we still have to complexify the light. So we can, of course, do this with local adjustment brush. So which parts of the image are really interesting? I think, of course, the light trail here, but the light trail already is really bright, so we don't have to brighten it up here, because it really the viewer just looks at it at his first glance, because it's the brightest part of the picture, the lights here, and also the light of the lighthouse. But I think this tree here on the right is also interesting. The viewer maybe at his second glance then should look on this tree. So we brighten this tree a bit up. I really like the tree here, this bush. It's really interesting. It just has a fuzzy kind of look. So I brighten it up all the way. Something like that. So it looks really nice. And we can also brighten up this just a bit, these bushes here just a bit, so maybe not that much. If you hold the Alt key, you can erase a bit more. Okay, so I think this kind of looks nice. And now we can also complexify the light by using radial filters again. So for example, I think this rock here is really really looking interesting, so we can brighten it up just a bit by dragging a radial right onto the rock here. Just make it a bit brighter and make sure feather is at 100 so that it looks natural. So let's take a look at the before and after of the radials. Yeah, and it also adds a bit of dynamics to the image. I like that. Okay. And maybe here also we can duplicate this radial filter and drag it over here to just make some points of light and complexify the light situation more. So there's no right or wrong. Also, we maybe can brighten up the lighthouse, of course. So let's duplicate the radial filter again and drag it onto the lighthouse, because the lighthouse really is the important part of the image. Just brighten it up a bit. And maybe here we can also add a bit of clarity to strengthen the contrast of the star. Okay, just looks nice. So let's take the brush again and maybe just brush a bit over these stones here. Brighten them up a bit to make the light more complicated and more interesting. The whole light situation. Yeah, maybe here also we can brush a bit. Okay. Maybe not that much. Okay, wonderful. And here it also just, it looks like the sun was shining onto this rock here, so I kind of like that. Okay, so that's looking nice. Done. If you're done, just click done. And of course, as always, take a look at other things and then come back to your image and see if you still like what you did here. So I kind of like that. And now here, before I took the image, here was a boat which made a nice wave. So I'd like to also highlight this wave a bit, because I think it adds more dynamics to the image, because we have already curves here into our composition. And then we would have a curve here on the water again. So I think this is really interesting for our image. So let's take the brush again. And the brush, make it a bit smaller, of course. Just like that. Boost the exposure a bit. And now just paint over this wave. So something like that. Okay, that's kind of nice. And then, of course, not too much, so that the viewer doesn't recognize that you brushed this in. Then zoom out a bit. Okay, that's a bit too strong, so we will lower the exposure just a tiny bit, maybe like that. Then we just click done. And boom. So here is a bit still the light of the boat, but we will take care of that if we are in Photoshop. So of course you can use the spot removal tool here in Lightroom, but as I already told you in the basics lesson, it doesn't work really well in Lightroom. So I don't like this tool. I really go to Photoshop to remove such things. And yeah, so I can show you the before and after now. So it's just amazing how we complexified the light, how we added more dynamics to the image, how we added color to the image. And now it has a complete different look and it's just looking amazing. So the last thing we have to do in Lightroom is take care of the sharpening. So let's go to details section in Lightroom and set the right amount for sharpening. So as we then in Photoshop of course use the high pass filter as always, we can still do some basic sharpening here in Lightroom. So I maybe go to 50 or something like 60 and now do a little mask, of course, because I don't want the sky to be sharpened here, that we don't add noise to this. So only the parts which are white now get sharpened. So I only want the borders to be sharp here. So maybe I take a value of 60 here also. So now the corners, the borders get sharpened. And maybe as we open up the shadows that much, let's take a look. Take some time until the Lightroom loads the raw file, because it's also very big, the raw file of the Sony A7. It has more than 40 megabytes. So maybe we can do a bit of noise reduction, just a bit, and maybe boost the sharpening just a bit more to around 70. Okay, so with the screen recording, Lightroom is always a bit slow, but I think that's no problem. Okay, so now it's much more sharp. We can also correct the color noise, so the color cast here to go around 40. And I think then we're done in Lightroom with the raw developing. So now we have to copy or to synchronize all the things. Just one correction, I think it looks kind of weird here in the lighthouse, it's a bit too bright. Okay, so now it looks more natural. We can just copy all the settings we've done, everything, the cropping, the colors, the local adjustments, everything to the other raw files, that these have nearly the same look, and then we can blend them together in Photoshop. So to do this, we make a right click onto the photo we've just edited and go to Develop Settings and Copy Settings. Then a pop-up opens and we select all, make sure that check all is enabled. Then click copy. And now we will select all the other files, all the other raw files here at the bottom. And then we make a right click on them, go to Develop Settings and Paste Settings. So it takes some time. And then you'll see how all these settings are applied to the other raw files. Boom, boom. So now these are also edited. Okay, so now we want to open these raw files as layers in Photoshop. So we make sure that all these 6 raw files are selected. Then we make a right click on it, go to Edit, and then Open as layers in Photoshop. And we click that, and now it of course takes a bit of time because these raw files all are very big. They will just wait a few seconds.